at geico.com or 1-800-947-AUTO. WNYC supports the arts. Join us in supporting local cultural organizations, including International Youth Fellowship, showcasing musical performances dedicated to the growth of young individuals through music, and Nurture Art, an organization that nurtures new contemporary art through exhibition opportunities and resources for emerging artists, curators, and public school students. For more details about the Support the Arts program, visit wnyc.org/star.
On the next Brian Lehrer Show, hear how the presidential candidates are presenting their foreign policy plans in the aftermath of the Paris attacks and what their proposals would mean for American troops. Plus, listen up because Mary Harris, host of Only Human on WNYC, explains what we all can do to become better listeners. That's tomorrow morning at 10 on WNYC. Well, tonight it is clear. We're going to have lows all the way down in the lower 40s. And tomorrow, Tuesday, will be sunny, but our high will only get up to about 49 degrees. Looking ahead to Wednesday and Thursday, we can expect rain. So enjoy the evening. Currently 63 degrees at 7:20.
Support for NPR comes from member stations and from Inada, Japanese maker of full-body massage chairs, including the Flex 3S, with pre-programmed shiatsu massages and full-body stretch sessions at inadausa.com. That's INADAUSA.com. And Barracuda Networks, offering cloud-connected security solutions for blocking cyber threats, including network intrusions, malicious websites, and application vulnerabilities. More information is available at barracuda.com.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Audie Cornish.
And I'm Ari Shapiro. The attacks in Paris are recharging the debate about privacy and security. One question is, how easily should the government be able to access electronic communications? We're going to explore that today in All Tech Considered. New York Police Commissioner Bill Bratton is one of many officials who warn that new technologies may allow terrorists to go dark and escape government surveillance. I spoke to him today as he was in his car on the way to a press conference.
Good afternoon. Good to be with you.
Begin by just briefly explaining what you mean by the phrase going dark.
It refers to the fact that many of the smartphone devices, the manufacturers that make those devices, have now consciously designed those phones so they cannot be accessed by anybody. In other words, they've been encrypted so that even if we in law enforcement had court orders allowing us to search the phone, if you will, or the device, we would not be able to decipher the encrypted material on the phone. Additionally, there are many apps that are now available that similarly encrypt messages. And so from a law enforcement perspective, we describe this experience of going dark, that we no longer can penetrate the darkness to conduct our investigations. It's a very significant negative factor in our ability to detect and disrupt terrorist-related activity.
And are you aware of any specific intelligence that the people who plotted or carried out the attacks in Paris used encryption technology?
We are waiting for the investigations by the French authorities to go forward to determine what devices these individuals may have been using for communication. Were they, in fact, encrypted types of devices? I think the French have indicated that they had no prior awareness of these attacks, reinforcing the concern that these operations may have been assisted by use of this encrypted technology. We'll know more as the investigation goes forward. Right now it's speculative on my part, certainly. But for something of this magnitude to have gone undetected, the French have excellent intelligence services. It would be very unusual and also, needless to say now, very troubling in light of the horrific damage that was caused in Paris.
There's a piece in Forbes today that argues whatever governments attempt to do, whatever technology they blame, terrorists and criminals will find new ways to protect their communications from snoops. Do you agree with that? And if so, are you just playing whack-a-mole with new technologies, or are you asking for some specific authority that will solve this problem?
The world we're living in today, it's evolving faster than any of us can fully appreciate. So that is correct in some sense that from the beginning of time in the law enforcement world, we're continually trying to stay ahead of the criminal mind. And in this new period of time in the 21st century, we're finding ourselves having more difficulty staying ahead of the curve because of the rapidly advancing technology. So whether it's in cybercrime, identity theft issues, terrorism, we are really, I would say, struggling to stay ahead. As fast as you and I are talking, there's new technologies coming out that we have no idea of their capabilities.
And so, what specific legal authorities are you seeking to solve that problem?
We are not seeking specific legal authorities at this juncture. I'm certainly not proposing a specific remedy. We're still trying to get our arms around the problem, identify for the American public that it is a problem, and one that we're looking at very closely, and will seek to identify legislative tools that would assist us to fulfill our obligations to try to protect the American public from traditional crime and terrorism. But increasingly, we are finding ourselves without the tools to do that.
That's New York City Police Commissioner Bill Bratton. Commissioner Bratton, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure being with you.
And now we're joined by NPR's Steve Henn in Silicon Valley. He's been speaking with privacy advocates and executives at many of the tech companies that make the products and apps that Commissioner Bratton is worried about. Hey, Steve.
Hi.
Well, how do privacy advocates respond to the concerns that we just heard Commissioner Bratton express?
So, Ari, the first thing that I think it's important to say is that everyone we've been talking to was horrified by what happened in Paris. But the privacy advocates we've been talking to said they thought it was premature to make the case that strong encryption played a role in making these attacks possible. They say at this point, we really don't know enough about how the perpetrators communicated to be sure. And they also make the case that, in fact, we're living in what they call a golden age of surveillance. They say it's never been easier for law enforcement to use the way we communicate to track what we say and what we do. And so they're really already pushing back against this notion that encryption technologies have allowed terrorist networks to go dark.
Well, Steve, explain a little bit more about this encryption that so concerns law enforcement. Are we talking about high-level hacker stuff or just pretty standard stuff in any communications technology?
Well, right now, this kind of technology is built into many of the kinds of tools that we use all the time. End-to-end encryption is baked into iMessage. It's used by WhatsApp, which is owned by Facebook and used by hundreds of millions of people around the globe. And that basically is when a message is scrambled on my device and it is sent directly to your device. And it's only at that point in your device that it can be decrypted and understood. And that leaves law enforcement unable to read messages after the fact or during an investigation. And that's really what they've been pushing back against. And, Ari, we heard Commissioner Bratton say that he wasn't asking for anything in particular, but some in the intelligence community here in the United States and in the intelligence community and law enforcement in Europe have been asking tech companies to consider building back doors into these services for exactly these kinds of emergencies.
What are you hearing from tech companies that are sort of caught in the middle of this tug of war?
Well, they have a couple problems with this request for a backdoor. They say if they are forced to create a master key that opens a back door into their networks, all of their customers' communications become more vulnerable, and not just to law enforcement. They say that kind of back door is going to be a target for national security agencies from every country in the world. It will be a target for sophisticated hackers. And they say if they're forced to build it, it will be impossible to keep it safe.
Let me ask you a question I put to Commissioner Bratton, which is this just a game of whack-a-mole where ever-evolving technologies will constantly give people who want to evade eavesdropping a way to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Commissioner Bratton was right there. And the other thing that's important to note is that really sophisticated, powerful encryption is out there in the public right now. So if these big tech companies are forced by law or convinced by national security agencies to create a backdoor, there is nothing stopping a kid in a garage from building an app that could keep these messages secret. And that's probably what would happen.
That's NPR's Steve Henn in Silicon Valley. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Support for All Tech Considered comes from Farmers Insurance, whose agents can educate people on common insurance gaps to help them prevent unwanted surprises. More at farmers.com/gaps. And from Carbonite, providing secure automatic cloud backup and recovery solutions for businesses and homes. Learn more at carbonite.com.
It's All Things Considered on WNYC, and in the wake of the Paris attacks, President Obama is defending his strategy for fighting ISIS.
Even as we grieve with our French friends, however, we can't lose sight that there has been progress being made.
The president maintains his plan to defeat ISIS will work. We'll take a deeper dive after news headlines. Tonight, it is clear, lows down in the 40s. Tomorrow, Tuesday, sunny with a high only near 49 degrees. Currently, it is 61 degrees in Central Park at 7:30.
To help keep New York safe from terrorism, former police commissioner Ray Kelly says, don't take ISIS's bait.
What they're trying to do is commit these atrocities to actually lure us into a major land war in the Middle East.
Ray Kelly on The Brian Lehrer Show. Next time, can the presidential hopefuls resist? The Brian Lehrer Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
WNYC support comes from the Whitney Museum of American Art, presenting Frank Stella, a retrospective. Frank Stella's most comprehensive American retrospective to date, with more than 100 works from his nearly 60-year career, now through February 7th. Tickets at whitney.org. WNYC is a media partner of Monica Bill Barnes and Company, presenting Happy Hour, a show from the company that united dance and radio with Ira Glass. Happy Hour combines karaoke, cocktails, and modern dance every Wednesday. Details at monicabillbarnes.com.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says Islamic militants are psychotic monsters. Standing outside the U.S. Embassy in Paris, which is illuminated in the French blue, white, and red, he reiterated America's strong ties to France.
Tonight, the U.S. Embassy in Paris joins the many other landmarks around the world, shining the bleu, blanc, rouge lights of the French Republic.
Friday's attack killed 129 people and wounded more than 300 others. And in northern Iraq, a Kurdish Peshmerga officer says his men have repelled an ISIS attack near Mount Sinjar. NPR's Allison Muse reports the attack comes days after Kurdish forces celebrated the liberation of the city of Sinjar.
The officer says ISIS launched a surprise attack with 10 suicide car bombs. Iraqi Kurdish soldiers called in U.S.-led coalition airstrikes and managed to push back ISIS on the ground. The officer, who didn't give his name because he's not authorized to talk to media, says they found dozens of bodies of ISIS fighters after the clash. The attack was on the outskirts of the town of Zumar, retaken from ISIS more than a year ago. A successful attack on Zumar could threaten a nearby border crossing with Syria. The attack comes just days after U.S.-backed Kurdish forces pushed ISIS out of the city of Sinjar, about 40 miles away. Allison Muse, NPR News, Northern Iraq.
The search for the black box from the cargo ship El Faro that went down last month in the Atlantic with 33 crew members on board is over. The National Transportation Safety Board says crews were unable to locate it. The ship's bridge is sitting in the 15,000 feet of water. The 790-foot freighter sank after it lost engine power during a Category 4 hurricane. Wall Street higher by the closing bell. The Dow up 237 points, the Nasdaq up 56, S&P 500 up 30. This is NPR.
This is WNYC in New York. I'm Jamie Floyd. The NYPD is launching a new counterterrorism unit. The Critical Response Command will be tasked with preventing and responding to terrorism threats in New York City. Heavily armed officers will be deployed to sensitive areas. Bill Bratton says the new unit has learned to respond to this kind of new attack.
We operate on the assumption if we have one of these attacks, their intention is to kill everybody that they get their hands on. So we will move very quickly to move in to stop that threat.
The commissioner says the first deployed unit includes 100 officers and will eventually have more than 500. Dramatic new testimony in the corruption trial of former Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver suggests one of New York State's biggest developers was afraid of the consequences if it stopped steering money to him. WNYC's Robert Lewis reports.
In 2011, Glenwood Management's head of government relations, Richard Runas, learned that some money the company was paying for tax appeal work was actually going to Silver. Runas testified he was worried that might not be legal under state lobbying rules. A Glenwood lawyer said it was technically okay, but Runas still worried it might look bad if anyone found out, but he didn't want to steer money away from Silver for fear of alienating the powerful speaker. So the company kept the checks flowing and found a way to hide the arrangement from public disclosure. For WNYC, I'm Robert Lewis.
Testimony in the Silver trial continues tomorrow. The MTA wants to spend tens of millions of dollars on new buses. WNYC's Kate Hines reports one official wants the new design to make it easier for drivers to see pedestrians.
The Transit Authority's board is in the process of approving a $185 million contract to build 230 new articulated buses. But Transportation Commissioner Polly Trottenberg is raising an objection. She's charged with implementing the city's Vision Zero traffic safety campaign, and she's also on the MTA board.
We need to find a bus design that's going to help reduce that pillar, which is, clearly become an issue for bus drivers in terms of visibility.
2 pedestrians have been killed by MTA bus drivers so far this year. The Transport Workers Union has said bus design needs to improve visibility for drivers, especially when turning. For WNYC, I'm Kate Hines.
Tonight it will be mostly clear with lows in the 40s. Currently it is 61 degrees in Central Park at 7:35.
Support for NPR comes from WNYC members and from Farmers Insurance, informing people about common insurance gaps so they won't be surprised by what their policy actually covers. Agent locator and more info at farmers.com/gaps. Farmers Insurance, know the gaps. And Organic Valley, family farmers committed to the craft of sustainable farming, bringing holiday bakers organic milk, cream, butter, and eggs for over 25 years. Organic Valley, bringing the good.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Audie Cornish.
And I'm Ari Shapiro. President Obama says the terrorist attacks on Paris are a, quote, terrible and sickening setback in the battle against ISIS.